that's just not going to actually work as a service and at scale. You certainly can't do that then across the entire United States.
So let's start off with this war of words that's happening. So we know that in June, Tesla's launching RoboTaxi in Austin, and actually Uber and Waymo have partnered in Austin. So you would use the Uber app, but you can then select they have very little cars there. We'll find out how many exactly. So this is a Tesla RoboTaxi. They're going to use the Model Ys versus the Waymo RoboTaxi. This is what they look like still, despite all these years. Heavily outfitted. Both will be competing against each other in Austin this June. Yeah. And then you've got, one
of those things definitely looks like you're going to be way safer than the other one.
Well, yeah, which one? I would say it's this one because, I'll go to the one that has these.
I know I agree. The Waymo looks like a self-driving car. It also looks dumb. Like those two things kind of go together, but maybe that, gives you a little bit more confidence as a customer to get in it. But the proof will be in the pudding when people try the different systems and like, wow, this actually drives safely. And I think the look of the Teslas is definitely a benefit long term. I think it will take a little bit of getting used to at first, but there are a couple of other much more important differences between the networks that we'll talk about as we move forward.
So we're going to see it's head to head. This is great, actually. I'm glad that in Austin we're going to see head to head, not just one versus the other. So yesterday, these war of words. Elon started it, I guess, when he said way more money. Ex-Waymo CEO John Krafcik came back and he replied this. He said, response to Elon saying that Waymo's cost more money, that Tesla has never competed with Waymo. They've never sold a RoboTaxi ride to a public rider. They've failed utterly and completely at this for each of the 10 years they've been talking about it. In the long run, the cost of sensors has a trivial cost per mile impact over the useful life of a RoboTaxi, while also providing massive quantifiable safety benefits. It's just like what you almost said here. That's him referring to the cost. So just a reminder to everybody, Elon said this. He said this at the earnings call. The issue with Waymo's cars is it costs way more money, but that is the issue. The car is very expensive, made in low volume. Teslas are probably cost 25% or 20% of what a Waymo costs and made in very high volume. So ironically, we're the ones to make the bet that a pure AI solution with cameras, and what do you have? The car actually will listen for sirens and that kind of thing. It's the right move. And Waymo decided that an expensive sensor suite is the way to go, even though Google's very good at AI. That's what he said. And then Graphic, I just read to you what he said. It says here, well, after 10 years of undelivered promises, it seems pretty rational for those watching to be data and evidence driven. There's still a lot of promises, still no Tesla liability for FSD driving performance, and still no universal RoboTaxi service.
Well, Waymo doesn't have a universal RoboTaxi service either. They have a RoboTaxi service that operates in Chandler, Arizona, and San Francisco, and soon to be Austin. That's not necessarily universal. These comments to me are funny on a number of levels. Part of, is it Travis, did you say? What was his, Krafcik?
Krafcik, John Krafcik.
John. So John's comments they remind me a lot of the type of rhetoric that you used to hear out of Blockbuster upper level management when Netflix had come onto the scene and everyone's like, hey, is Netflix going to be a competitive threat to you? No, it's not going to be a competitive threat to us. No, it's not going to be a competitive threat to us. And, they don't have any locations. How are they going to rent these movies to everything? Oh, it's going to be too expensive to send people DVDs through the mail. Oh, it's, not having that big of an impact on our thing. And then eventually Netflix turns on video streaming and Blockbuster is instantly dead. And those are, just because they're not competing with you head to head using the same strategy that you're using does not mean they are not competing with you. And that is the situation that we have here between Waymo and Tesla. And when you even look at the strategy that Waymo has for Austin, it already basically admits that Tesla's going to have the advantage. The reason that Waymo is partnering with Uber in Austin is because they don't have the ability to put enough cars on the road to reach the scale necessary to provide people with a high quality service where they don't have to wait for the car forever. And so what's going to happen is they're going to have, 5% or 10% of the cars that they need to service the Austin uh, area. And then the rest of the cars are just going to have to be Ubers. And so will you be able to pick, like, I want to ride a Waymo in Austin? Well, you can ask for it. Maybe you'll get it, maybe you won't. Or maybe you can get it, but you're going to have to wait 10 extra minutes to get picked up. That's just not going to actually work as a service and at scale. And you certainly can't do that then across the entire United States. So those, like, they've already basically admitted that they're going to struggle to reach the type of scale to saturate a market and provide a high quality ride hail service. He can say that, yes, the cost of the sensors is not a factor in the cost of the RoboTaxi over its lifetime. That may be true. It really isn't that big of a deal when you talk about something that could potentially earn hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue, but it's still a big problem up front because you've got to pay to get those things on the road. And if Tesla can put a RoboTaxi on the road that costs them 25% of what yours cost them, that means that they have 75% less cost to actually build the fleet than you do. Oh, and also Waymo, you don't know how to build cars. So who's going to build these cars for you? You're going to have to go partner with somebody else. And right now, there is no tangible plans that Waymo has with any manufacturing partner that has the possibility to scale into the hundreds of thousands of units per year number, much less the millions of units per year. And Tesla does have that scale already. And so it really depends on, what your assumptions are around how long it's going to take to fully commercialize this technology. If you think that it's such a hard problem to solve that no one will solve it, including Tesla, for the next 10 years, then maybe Waymo has the time to figure out all of those scale bottleneck issues. But if artificial intelligence applied to autonomous vehicles is able to do the same types of performance leaps that we've seen it do in other areas like language, where, chatbots kind of exist, but they suck in 2020, 2021, and then poof, ChatGPT comes out, and then holy smokes, they actually work and they work good, and like they take the whole world by storm. That is what the foundational technology that Tesla is using to build their RoboTaxi network is built on. Tesla has a lot of confidence that they can roll that out this year, and that over the next 12 to 15 months that they can work out all of the kinks. And then once all of the kinks are worked out, then they're already producing literally millions of cars per year that can then operate as RoboTaxis, not just in a couple of cities, but potentially all around the United States. And so these arguments, they're really, they just don't stand up to scrutiny. And I think that both, like, if you look at their actions and not just their words, that both Uber and Waymo's actions speak very loudly that they are strategically in a tough spot and they are afraid for their future.
Yeah, I think you made a couple of very, very good points. That Waymo needed to partner with Uber because if somebody ordered a car, they can't provide an autonomous car. They have, and I'll show you the numbers here, they have less than 300 cars in Austin right now. Well, that's the max that they'll ever do. But what's surprising to me is that all these years, you see the LiDAR still massive. I mean, you think that by now they would have been shrunk a little bit. The cost would have gone down. You see that they've not gone past, let's say, some people are thinking they have 1,000 cars, maybe 2,000 cars. Regardless, 2,000 cars is so tiny. Like, you think by now they would have spent that money. And so your point that if his point about how much money costs to run is going to be trivial over the course of a lifetime, it's per mile it costs, then right, how are you going to get 1 million cars? Let's say 10,000 cars. 10,000 cars times
Google would definitely have
$100,000.
to put up a giant load of cash in order for them to scale. Yeah. So
this is Elon's
and let me go
back.
just for a second to the comment that I made about the Waymos do look safer because they have all that bulbous, it looks terrible, but it also looks safer. And I think that will be somewhat of an initial impediment for people to get over. If they have ever experienced a Waymo, they might prefer the Waymo because they're going to assume that it's safer. If they've never experienced either one, it's not going to be an issue, which is going to be the vast majority of consumers when they try, like, because there's only 250,000 rides per week isn't insignificant, but like there's a lot of people, and like those 250,000 rides, that's probably the same people over and over and over again, and they're pretty much all located in a couple of places. So the vast majority of consumers in the United States will never have experienced a Waymo. They won't have a preference one way or the other. For the other ones, would you be willing to try it for literally half the cost? Would you just try it once? Yes, you might be a little bit more skittish about, is it going to be safe enough? But would you try it? And then once you've tried it and it gets you there safely, will you try it again? Because heck, it's half the cost.
And people in China saying that Tesla cars, FSD, is so much safer. It feels safer the way it drives. And so once you've had one Tesla drive, you'll go, okay, yeah, it's actually safer the way it drives.
Because it feels so much more human. And like a Waymo with all those sensors and all that complicated human written C code is just never going to feel natural like a Tesla will feel, because it is driving using the same, architecture that you drive with, the neural nets and the cameras.
So Elon, of course, said this in response to that: Waymo needs way more money to succeed, way more money. So as we said earlier, Waymo has 700 cars, okay? And 300 of which are in San Francisco. So that's what they have. And so how many do they have in Austin? Maximum 400, but they have 7 cities. So let's say 100 cars. That's all it is. It really is very, very minimal. Let's say they do have 1,000 or 2,000 because they plan to buy that many. Great. That's 2,000. We'll see what Tesla does. I know the Tesla starts with 10 to 20 in the first day, but we'll see what happens by the end of this year. So
since they're launching with Model Ys, they could literally, they produce thousands of Model Ys a week out of Austin. And so if they allocated 1 week's worth of production to Model Ys for Austin, they can do 2 or 3 or 4 times as many cars as Waymo has in its entire fleet, just for one market. Those are just big differences in numbers. And if you recall, I think James Dalma had said that it would take about 10,000 cars to saturate the Chicago ride-hail market to a very high level. Yep. And if you say that, Austin's a smaller city than Chicago by a significant margin. So, maybe it'll take 5,000 or 7,500. Either way, like you're talking about a week to 2 weeks of production out of the Austin, Texas Gigafactory. And, how long is it going to take Waymo to do that based on the run rate? We can cherry pick what data that it is. We're going to look back and see Waymo's going to say, hey, they've offered 0 paid RoboTaxi rides. Okay. Waymo has produced less than 1,000 autonomous vehicles, and Tesla ships them every day. So yeah, it's going to be fun to watch this play out. And the thing is, like, if you want to arbitrarily say, okay, they haven't offered any paid rides, maybe that's technically true, but you can still get in the car and you can experience FSD and you can know that it actually can drive itself. Like, yes, have they worked out all of the logistical details around that? Not quite yet, but that's coming soon. And so you can look at and have a high confidence that, yes, they can drive themselves autonomy. They can offer a ride-hail service, because when I ride around in the car that I own, it pretty much does that already.
Very good points. Okay, so let's go through some stats here. Waymo did publish this just yesterday. It said we're now providing more than 250,000 fully autonomous paid rides each and every week. The RoboTaxi future is here, and it's powered by a generalizable Waymo driver. That's what they said. I'm going to turn this down. Yeah, so San Francisco, Los Angeles, Phoenix, Austin. More cities coming soon. Yeah. So that's 250,000 is a lot. That's a fully autonomous paid rides. That's according to Omar, he calculated more than 1 million driverless Waymo rides are now taking place every month in the US, right? 35,000 rides per day, 700 cars. That's 50 rides per day per car. 50 rides a day for 24 hours. That's one ride every 30 minutes or so. And they probably increased to 1 to 2,000 cars at this point. So this is a good summary of the differences. Waymo founded in January 2019. Tesla AI started in June 2016. First driverless rides in October 2020. 11 years and 9 months to go driverless. So it took them a long time to get there. First version shipped January 2017. Andrej Karpathy, FSC beta, launch in October 2020. First driverless rides expected June 2025. So 9 years to go driverless. Good summary. But this idea that Waymo is so far ahead, well, they started a long time beforehand. And that's part of the reason why they committed to LiDAR was because they started in 2009 when there was no such thing as neural nets and
AlexNet had not yet occurred. And, that's kind of a pivotal moment in the development of artificial intelligence.
So once they put in that bet and they started going that route, they couldn't really switch back. So
they could have, they just chose not to.
Good point. That's right. 4 Chinese car companies decided to realize, Tesla's got the right path. They switched a year ago. These guys are being stubborn. So it relies on pre-mapped 3D maps of its operational areas of function. You have to go and pre-map an area. $180,000 per car. That's an estimate. We don't know what the real number is, but it only costs close to $50,000 for Model Y. That's the difference. So
I just want to make a comment real quickly too on this. This really is a demonstration of the uniqueness of Tesla and what it means to have a deeply technical CEO who has founder mode capability to say, this is the direction that we're going to go and full speed ahead. Because if you get a committee of engineers together, every single time you're going to get at least some, if not the majority of that committee of engineers are going to say, we need to use LiDAR because it's going to be safer. Yes, it's going to cost more. Yes, blah, blah, blah. Like as engineers, we just like these idealistic, perfect technologies and solutions, and we'll always want more. And that's just like going to be the bottoms up message. And there's not going to be that many people who have the foresighted ability to look at AlexNet in 2012 when all of a sudden neural nets were able to recognize images and say, hey, if we just play that forward far enough and follow along with Moore's law, we're going to be able to do that for video. And it's going to be so good that if we can do that for video, that we're then going to be able to train an artificial intelligence driver based on that. And we're not going to need LiDAR, that our vision cameras can provide us with every single piece of data that we're getting from our LiDAR cameras. Yeah. And of course it can work because humans can do it. Like that is, some engineers will make that calculus, but inside of an organization where you've got thousands of engineers, the ability of that cohort of engineers to win the argument is going to be low, especially when they are appealing to a non-technical project leader or CEO like Sundar Pichai. It just doesn't understand this stuff well enough for the people who are making that argument inside of Waymo and inside of Google to be like, no, all you other people who say that you want LiDAR, you're wrong. Shut up. We're not going to do that. We're going this way. And that is how Tesla has been able to execute on these technologies time and time again, is because Elon does have the ability to listen to all of the engineers making all of the different arguments inside of the company and actually identify from first principles which argument is the correct argument. And then once he identifies the correct argument, then he enforces from the top down that we are going to go in the path of the correct argument, regardless of how many people don't like it. And that's one of the reasons why I am deeply invested in Tesla and I have no Google shares.